So now let's start. So where we are, last week we start this lecture, right? So we start lecture 2 that discuss alternative and a choice. Here is a roadmap for this chapter. So far we have learned the first part, which is a set of principles. And then also today we are going to study the second part, which are production possibility frontier and opportunity costs. All right, so let me quickly walk through with you the set of principles that we have reviewed. But for most of students who has not taken principle macro, principle micro, so essentially we just learn those principles, right? So principle number 1, choices are necessary because resources are scarce, right? So many resources, pretty much all resources are scarce, right? So including fresh air, including clean water, right? So they are scarce. Because they're scarce, and then we must make choice. Why we must make choice? Because we then so we can efficiently use those resources that are scarce, right? So here are definitions for resources and scarce or scarcity. The second principle, true cost of something is its opportunity cost. Make sure you understand what is opportunity cost, right? So that's an important concept. We are going to see that concept again today, right? We are going to utilize the concept of opportunity cost to understand many important economic phenomena and economic principle, okay, opportunity cost. Now, third, how much is a decision at the margin? Okay, so margin is how we understand economic decision. At the margin, we do trade-off analysis, okay? Or in the margin, we trade off the cost and the benefit, and then so we decide, should we do one more or not? Okay? And here, so we have a list of concepts related to margin, include marginal decision, marginal analysis. Incentive is key for economics or understanding economics. In some sense, people say economics is a science of incentive. Let me write down science of incentive. So that's economics. Economics is a science of incentives, right? Incentives is anything that offers reward to people who change their behavior. Just think rewards in a broader sense. Rewards can be positive, can be negative. If it is a negative reward, meaning it's a punishment. So people also respond to punishment. Just think about those laws, right? So there are traffic laws. We have to follow the law. Otherwise, we get punished. So that's incentive. And we have discussed this case last week. So essentially, so we are going to face similar situation pretty much every day. And then so we must make our trade-offs, we must respond to our incentive, right? So this, and the fourth principle, people usually respond to incentive, exploiting opportunity to make them better off. Here I want to emphasize everybody make them better off, right? Or everyone is behave on their best interest. So that naturally leads to a concept we are going to discuss later. It's called invisible hands. So this invisible hand is going to use this principle. What is the principle? Everybody is going to try to do their best to make themselves better off. And this invisible hand use this principle, and eventually this invisible hand is going to guide the market reach towards equilibrium. Remember, equilibrium is not the concept we discussed in last class. It's coming up. Right. Here we have example how people is going to exploit opportunity to make themselves better off. We have discussed this example. And again, so in the future, when we do this economic analysis, we must first identify economic agents. So let me write down. We identify who are those economic agents. And secondly, to identify, so what are the incentive? And the third, trying to understand how they respond to incentives. And then lastly, what is the economics behind those stories we just talked about, right? Okay, so principle number 5, there are gains from trade, right? And here, so we have a concept called specialization. So that's what we are going to discuss today. Let me use a different color. I'm not sure which color is work better. So let me show you this one. Okay. So specialization. Okay, so that's what we are going to discuss today. And then lastly, market move towards equilibrium. What is equilibrium? Equilibrium is an economic situation in which no individual would be better off doing something different. Again, so behind this concept or behind this economic situation, we have this invisible hand. So this invisible hand just follows the principle, everyone behave on their best interest. Everybody exploiting opportunity to make themselves better off. And towards the end, this principle leads us towards equilibrium. Okay? So those are 6 principles we discussed. Right? And let me just skip this video. Okay? Now we go to the new things we're supposed to discuss today. Start with model. What is a model? Model is a simplified, so first a simplified, number 1. And secondly, let me again use different color, make sure. Secondly, it is a representation. This is a second, apologize, it seems that we have the same color. Let me use, oh, I see, ink. Okay, so first is simplified, and secondly is a representation, right? And the third part, so this is a representation of real situation or real world. And lastly, why we want to simplify, or why we want to have a simplification. This is because we are going to use that to better understand real life situation. Here in the background, so this is a perfect example of model. So in the background, we have a old map. The point of map is useful to, let's just go one by one, used to better understand real life situation. And in the example of map, in the context of map, the map is used to better understand how the planet Earth is structured, or how we are going to find a direction when we travel. But then, so in real world, it's very complicated. Why it is complicated? Because the world is 3-dimensional, right? So that's why we want to have a simplified. And then furthermore, so we have a simplified representation, like in this map. So we use different color, we use different line to represent different geographic characteristics, right? And finally, this is a representation of real situation. Again, so this map is used to represent how planet Earth is structured, how the globe looks like in a simplified version. And in economics, later on, we are going to see, so our real economy is very, very complicated. Think about in the United States, how many individuals we have, how many business we have, how many different type of business we have. To understand how the economy is structured, it's just too complicated or impossible if you have a replica on a theory. So for example, so you have a model, you have a theory that is going to consist of exactly amount of agent, exactly amount of households, exactly amount of business. It is impossible. Towards the end, we are going to use models to simplify. And later on, you're going to see, so one way to simplify our real economy is we are going to say regardless of who you are. So you are going to follow either of the three categories. First, you have households. And secondly, we have firm or business. And third, we have a government. How they're different. So household, they consume, and then they work. Firm, what they do. So they hire labor, they produce, and the good goes to households. Lastly, what does government do? Government regulates market. Government provides some public good. Say, for example, the government provides vaccine. The government asks everybody stay at home when there's a pandemic hits. The government provides subsidy when somebody needs. Now, so that's one way we look at the real world in the simplified representation. Okay, so this is a model. Now, in economics, we have a very important principle we are going to use. This is called ceteris paribus. This is from Greek. What that means, this just says other things equal, all other relevant factors remain unchanged. And why we do that? Just use Fistmax as an example. Fistmax price is going to be affected by many factors, right? Including for now, so the demand for Fistmax apparently is going to be dominated by the severeness of the pandemic, right? But in regular time, the demand for Fistmax may be affected by the housing market. Why I say that? Because a big chunk of the demand goes to the construction worker who need Fistmax to protect them from the dust, right? Or in regular time, the Fistmax, the demand for Fistmax may depend on the weather. So for example, if we have a very bad spring, we have lots of allergy, and then the demand for Fistmax will increase. Right? So you can see there are many different factors can affect one thing or can have influence on a particular economic phenomena. So in order to have a clear, sharp prediction regarding to how a particular factor affect the other factor, in the context of pandemic, we just want to see how or what affect the price of Fistmax. And then we are going to focus on the particular things that we are particularly interested in. And we leave everything else fixed. So this is called ceteris paribus, or other things equal assumptions. They just help us to isolate the most relevant factor and to understand how this most relevant factor affect our objective. Okay, so this is called ceteris paribus. We are going to see this principle many times down the road. All right, so now go to the next concept. It's called PPF, which stands for Production Possibility Frontier. So PPF is a diagram. Let me use different color to highlight. It's a diagram. First is a diagram that shows the combination of two goods. So this is a combination of two goods that are possible for a society to produce, at full employment. Let me just go one by one, highlight the importance or help you to understand how we interpret this concept. It is a diagram, meaning we are going to have a graphic of representation to understand this economic concept. This is number one, this is checked. Shows the combination of two goods. So here, two is a perfect example model. Two actually represent more. Like one typically means just singular, and two in economics typically means plural, meaning many. But apparently, so if you have two more, or let's say three or four, And then so the analysis becomes complicated. Unfortunately, so we introduce additional goods won't give us too much insight in terms of understanding the economics. So we make a trade-off. We say we use two to represent many. Now let me just highlight. So two represent many. Okay, two represent many. I apologize. So the color is not a good choice. Let's use blue. Represent many. All right. And the next that are possible. Meaning, so this is a concept regarding to the possibility or regarding to the feasibility. And finally, we can produce at full employment, meaning there's no resource wasted. Everyone is work. Okay, so this is the definition of production possibility frontier, or short for PPF. So what we can use with PPF? PPF is going to help us to answer the following questions. First, how much can we produce? So that's going to lead to the future definition, say for example, GDP. It also is going to be helpful for us to understand an important phenomena in macroeconomics called growth. Okay. Oh. Second question, what will it cost us to change our mix of production? So that is related to how we are going to structure our economy. So we have two different things to produce. Should we produce more A or should we produce more B? Remember here, two, it just represent many. Does it make sense to import a good from somewhere else? That relates to the concept of trade. So this PPF is going to help us understand the benefit of trade. Now, let me use examples to explain PPF and how we can use PPF to answer those questions we just raised in previous slides. Okay. Just think about there is an economy, or you can think about this is a business, either way. So in this economy, there are only two possible things they can produce to simplify. One is called Dreamliner. The other is called small jet. So how they're different? They're different in terms of the size. So this is simplification. So for you, you can easily replace Dreamliner with corn and small jet with apple, or whatever two goods you think are relevant. Okay. For now, let's just stick with Dreamliner versus small jet, or two different sides of airplane. In this table, so we list all the possible combination of goods the economy can produce. If the economy allocate all their resource into Dreamliner, and then so they can produce 30. This is the first row, and 0 small jet. Now, if the economy decide divert or move the resource from Dreamliner to small jet, and then you can see the number of Dreamliner they are going to produce is going to reduce. They just go down to the line. But then the number of small jet they can produce is going to gradually increase. Right? So we keep going, we keep moving down the table. You're going to see less and less Dreamliner you can potentially produce, but more and more small jet you can produce. And apparently here we see a trade-off. What is a trade-off? The more Dreamliner you want to produce, the less small jet you can produce. Or the more small jet you want to produce, the more Dreamliner you must give up. So this is a trade-off. And then what is PPF? PPF, it just put those data or put those observations into the diagram on the left-hand side. So in the diagram, this is two dimensions. On the horizontal line, we have quantity of small jet. On the vertical line, we have quantity of dreamliner. So those are two possible goods the economy can produce. And we just put those dots on the diagram one by one. Say, for example, 30 and 0 is going to correspond to this point, right? So if you have trouble to understand the representation, the graphical representation of this table, please let me know immediately. I can help you out. Okay? But this assumes we have the ability to do this simple analysis. All right, now we connect those dots. And then so what we are gonna get, we get a straight line. And this straight line is called PPF. Here, I want to emphasize PPF is not always a straight line. So later on, we have a separate slides show you how a PPF may look like. Or in other words, may not be a straight line. And I will explain why the PPF at some point or some different economic situation, it may not be a straight line. Okay, just keep that in mind. All right, so given this PPF, we just derived this straight line called PPF. Okay, given this PPF, so inside the PPF or this shaded area, so this is called inside. This is called feasible, meaning so we have the ability to produce anything inside. So for example, C is feasible. A is also feasible. B is feasible. Those are the things we can produce. But however, if you compare C to B or C to A, what you find out is, so C is not efficient. Not efficient. And why we say that is because if you compare A versus C, so A, you have the same amount of small jet, but A, you can produce more dreamliner. So in that sense, so C has not used all of our resources, or C hasn't pushed us to the frontier yet. So in that sense, that's why we call this line frontier. So frontier means we have pushed to our boundary. We have pushed to our limit in terms of how much we can produce. So to summarize, inside is feasible, but not efficient. On the contrary, if we look at the point D, D becomes infeasible, meaning so we do not have the ability or we don't have the resource to produce so much dreamliner and small jet at the same time. So D, not feasible. All right, so now go to the next slide. So this PPF raises a concept called opportunity cost, which is what we must have given up in order to get a goods. In this example, so we move down to the table. We produce less and less dreamliner, but we produce more and more small jet. That just means if you want to increase small jet, you must give up some dreamliner. Why? It's because the resource is limited. So in order to allocate resource to produce small jet, we must give up resource that is being used to produce dreamliner. In this case, so in order to produce 20 more small jet, that is, That just says if we move from the first row to second row, we produce additional 20 small jet. What are the costs? The cost is we give up 15 creamliner, right? And then so we have the opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? For each small jet, we give up this amount, right? So this is cost. Oh, apology. So this is on the denominator. That is the benefit. You want to gain 20 small jets. On the top, this is your cost. You have to give out 15 Dreamliner, right? So what is the opportunity cost? It's a cost you must give up in order to gain something. So the 15 divided by 20, that is the opportunity cost of small jet. Now let's look at a practice question. Suppose you are stranded on an island. Luckily, this island is rich in clams and mangoes. If you devote all of your time to harvesting clams, you can get 100 clams in a week. If you use all of your time to collect mangoes, you can find 200 mangoes in a week. Assume it is possible to collect fractional amount of both goods and draw a sketch of your production productivity frontier for a week. Calculate opportunity cost for each good. So there are two things you're supposed to do. One, so we need to draw a PPF. Secondly, so we need to calculate opportunity cost of each good. So now let me give you 5 minutes. We take a short break because I understand, so you have very limited amount of attention. This happens to everybody if we just watch Zoom. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes break. And during the break, you can get some waters or you can take a walk. But once you sit down, so please work out these. And then after we coming back from break, I will give you the answer. Right? Thank you so much.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom because it's
Okay, so let's continue our discussion. So how we are going to work out this problem? Right. So we have individuals or yourself. Either you can harvest 100 clams in a week or 200 mangoes in a week. Okay. So let me use a note. Okay. Either clam or mango. Right. So if you devote all your time in clam, you can have 100. Or if you devote all your time in mango, and then you're going to have 200. And then so the PPF is going to look like a straight line to connect these two dots, right? This dot or this dot. This part number one. Now, what is opportunity cost? Start with clam. So remember, so how we calculate the opportunity cost? Because you want to gain something, which is clam. And then you must give up something. How we are going to do? So we just basically compare 2 points, point here versus point here. Right? So let's label that. If you move from point M to point C, meaning so you gain 100 clams. How many mango do you give up? So you give up 200. Right? So that's going to give you an opportunity cost of 2 mangoes per clam. Right? So it's 2 mangoes per clam. Similarly, so if we look at opportunity cost of mango, and then so we move from C to M, right? And why I say move from C to M, now you want to gain mango at the cost of reducing the harvesting of clam. So now how many you gain? So you want to gain 200 mangoes. And at the cost of 100 clams. And it turns out the opportunity cost of mango is 1/2 clams is per mango. All right. Okay. So this answer to these questions. Oh.
Oops.
Yeah. All right. Let's look at another practice questions. So we have another economy. So this economy, they produce 2 goods. Remind you again, 2 represent more. So here 2 just means or represent many other things you can produce. And this economy, they can produce either lamp or sofa. And this table tells you the all possible combination of 2 goods, starting from A to F. You can see we move down the table, and then you're going to see the more lamps we produce, and then you give up sofa. Now the question is, what is the opportunity cost of each lamp? So the easiest way to do is we compare A to F, right? But we make sure we follow the right direction because we want to find out the opportunity cost of lamp. then we better move from A to F. So that's how you increase the length. And then so from A to F, we increase length by 250. And what is the cost? The cost is we give up 1,000 sofa. So 1,000, that's what you give up, and 250 is what you gain. So this is benefit. This is cost. Remember, it's opportunity cost. So just opportunity cost in terms of benefit. So then the answer is C for sofa. Alternatively, the opportunity cost of lamp is going to be 1/4 of, sorry, so the opportunity cost of sofa is going to be 1/4 of lamp. Right. Now, this is another practice question. This asks you learning by doing. Okay. Again, so this pandemic makes this group discussion difficult. Now, but I'm going to give you 1 minute to do the following things. So you're supposed to grab a piece of paper. You draw happy face and draw elephants. So you take turn to draw these things for 30 seconds and record the maximum number of happy face you can draw, and then the maximum number of elephant you can draw. After that, you construct your PPF and then calculate your opportunity cost. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to finish this drawing and another minute to construct your PPF and find out your opportunity cost. And don't discard that piece of paper. So we may need that piece of information later when we explain the concept of specialization and the benefit of trade. All right, so I'll give you 2 minutes.
It's thing.
I'm sorry?
Oh, nothing.
All right, so leave that with you, so because keep that with you, so we may need that piece of information later to understand the benefit of trading with each other. All right, so for now, let's just move on. So I told you earlier, in reality, the PPF may not be a straight line. So what we have seen so far, the PPF, most of the time, like a straight line, like this straight line. Right? But in reality, we may have a PPF is a curve. And this curve, typically we call this a concave. Okay? And how is particular about this PPF or this curve? So if you're familiar with slope, you're going to see the slope of this curve getting bigger and bigger. Or in other words, this curve becomes steeper and steeper. Okay? But then we need to understand what does this slope represent. Now return to earlier example. Use the example of mango versus clam. So this clam, this is mango. This is 100 and 200. Okay. The slope of this PPF curve is the slope, okay, is minus 200 divided by 100, or equal to minus 2 in this slope, right? And then, or in other words, the number inside this slope gives you the opportunity cost. Okay, and then so let's return to this line. The slope becomes steeper, meaning the opportunity cost on the horizontal line is increasing. Why I say that? There are two steps. Step number one, the slope of the PPF on each point gives you the opportunity cost of the good we produce on horizontal line. That's coming from this example, right? So we start with 200, 100. And I just expand to you, so the slope equal to negative 200 divided by 100. Again, so if you have any doubt or any concern and any trouble to understand this math, review your basic maths. And if you still have problem, let me know immediately. I can give you extra lecturing. Right, so this slope of this line gives you the opportunity cost for the good on horizontal line. Now we back to here, you can see the slopes getting bigger and bigger, meaning the opportunity cost of producing goods on horizontal line is increasing. Now we need to have economic explanation why the opportunity cost is increasing. All right? Okay, so let me summarize. The more we produce, the higher opportunity cost. That's short for OC. Okay? And in this particular case, the more small jet we produce, the higher the opportunity cost of small jet. Why is that? The economic explanation lies as follows. Just imagine, so we are the manager, or you are the manager, or you are the CEO of this company. We start with this point. We specialize in Dreamliner, or we start with the case we only produce Dreamliner. Now, you want to explore a different market by producing small jet. And then as a business manager or the CEO of the company, if you want to export new market, you must allocate some of your worker or your engineer to explore the new opportunity. Ask yourself, who are you going to dispatch first? Or which engineer are you going to choose? The answer will be apparent. You must pick your best engineer to explore the new market. Otherwise, other people is going to competing with you, you're going to lose the market. Right? And then, so if you send your best engineer into the new market, meaning so later on, once you increase the market share, or once you gradually increase the production of small jet, and then so you must send less efficient engineer or the less qualified engineer to the market gradually. So that explains why once you produce more small jet, the opportunity cost of small jet is increasing, because gradually you only have less and less qualified engineer to explore the new market. Yeah, so that explains the increasing opportunity cost. Okay. If we read this animation, you can see how things change. we produce first 20 small jet, require giving of 5 Dreamliners. Because we have the best engineer that can quickly adapt to the new market. Now, if we want to produce additional 20 more, that's going to require giving up 25 more Dreamliners. Because the second group of engineer is going to be less efficient compared to the first group of engineer. So that's a natural business. Right? All right, so this PPF can also help us understand economic growth. Okay? So how we use that? We start with this original PPF. So now we have new PPF, meaning so we push our frontier. If we compare A versus B, so that's a perfect example of economic growth. Move from A to E, we can produce more in both terms, in terms of a Dreamliner and a small jet. So that gives us a simple idea of economic growth. Right. Also, I want to remind you, so before economic growth or under the original PPF, E was infeasible or beyond our frontier, beyond our capacity. Now with economic growth, E becomes feasible. And this is a simple idea of economic growth. In order to achieve economic growth, we need to push our economic frontier, or we need to expand our PPF. All right, so now return to the earlier example. All right, so in the earlier example, what do we have? So we have clam, so this is slightly different from what I drew. We have clam on vertical line and a mango on horizontal line. Where we start? We start with 100 versus 200. Now, just imagine if you get bored and you become innovative. You invent a clam rack that doubles your clam production. What happened to your opportunity cost? But first, we need to draw the new PPF. Okay, so this is our new PPF, the dash line. With this new dash line, we can easily calculate the opportunity cost of clam production in terms of mango becomes 1. Before it was 2, now reduced to 1. Okay? Okay, so the last things we will discuss in this chapter is to understand the cause of the economic growth. I just explained to you, so in order to achieve economic growth, what we need to do, we need to expand our production possibility frontier, right? So we need to expand PPF. But how we can expand? Okay. There are 2 possibilities. Possibility number 1, if there's increase in factor of productions. But what are considered as factors of production? Resources used to produce goods and service. In the following slides, I'm going to explain to you what are resources that can be used to produce goods and service. This is one way to expand our PPF. The other way to expand our PPF is through better technology. In previous slides, in this slide, that's a perfect example of better technology. Okay. And what represents technology? Here, this clam rod represent the technology. This clam rod allows us to produce more clams at a lower cost, right? So those are the two possibilities that can push our PPF and achieve economic growth. Now, let's see what are considered as factor of production, or what are considered resource that can be used to produce goods and service. Factor number one, land. Land includes natural resources. Okay, land not only includes the acreage, it also includes the resource underneath the land, such as mineral deposits, oil, natural gas, waters, right? Land. And the land is particularly important for agriculture economy. But the resource inside the land has become the blood of industrial technology. Think about mineral deposit, oil, natural gas. In agriculture economy, so most of the time they only utilize actual land acreage. They only use land to grow fruits or grow crops. This is the first resource. The second resource, we need labor that can operate the machine. Right? With the ore, we need labor to plow the land. Right? So we need labor to carry out the necessary economic activity. So that's the second factor. Now, the third factor is called physical capital. Physical capital is manufactured items used to produce other goods and service. Now, in this background picture, this tractor is a typical physical capital. So we can use this tractor to produce additional concrete or cement, so on and so forth. Right? And I want to emphasize the difference between physical capital and the land. Land is limited. Physical capital, in some sense, is unlimited. The reason why physical capital is unlimited is because we can use physical capital to produce physical capital. Right. And lastly, we need human capital. So human capital is the educational achievement and the skills of the labor force. Human capital becomes crucial in modern economic growth. Human capital will increase labor productivity. Remember, technology can help us to push the frontier outward or can expand our PPF. So human capital has the similar function. We come to school, we receive education, we get additional training, and we accumulate our human capital so that we have better organization, better way to produce, a more efficient way to produce. So those are considered as human capital. To summarize, so we have four resources: land, labor, capital. And the capital, we have physical capital and human capital. And finally, so we can push our frontier through technology or technological advance. So those are the things essential to economic growth, or those are the things can push the economic frontier and eventually brings us prosperity, brings us economic growth. All right. Okay, so I'm going to finish these slides by showing you a video. So in this video, you're going to see how technology progress can help us to expand our frontier or to help us achieve economic growth, right?
There's no sound with it.
Oh, so you cannot hear the video?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't hear it.
That's interesting. Strange. Do you still cannot?